Welcome, everybody. My name is Aiden Cliff, and I'm here to present my presentation today, Aloha Optimal Tourism, Economic Trade-Offs of the Travel and Tourism Industry in Hawaii. And before I begin my presentation, I just want to say a quick thank you to all the people who have made this possible, including all of my family and friends who supported me along the way. My research advisor, Professor Justin Leonard Lewis, who is currently in Penn presenting his own presentation, and everyone within the Kilachand Honors College, especially business manager Rick Tanetti, for really making this project a possibility, which is fantastic. So this is where my Keystone journey begins. And I wanted to really look at and answer the question, through analyzing the optimal level of tourism, I aim to provide insights into how the travel and tourism industry can be sustained while minimizing its negative impacts. I, as an economic major, make this the perfect question for me to look at. Economics, in its essence, is the study of how to maximize benefits while minimizing costs. So while travel and tourism is an absolutely fantastic opportunity that Hawaii has, there's also a lot of downsides for it that we need to mitigate and control for throughout this. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to use the term unskilled labor, which is simply an economic term that might sound demeaning to some, but it is essentially refers to an individual who has no form of specialized training, usually in the form of higher education. So this is just something that is used within the industry that we have here. This is where my Keystone journey begins. So what I did is I traveled to Honolulu, Hawaii, to interview lots of small business owners. So every single sort of touch point that you see on this map right here is someone who I talked to during my qualitative research trip while I was over in Hawaii. All of the different colors on this refers to someone in a different category that I have. So I talked to a very wide variety of people, from government individuals, recreation, restaurant, as well as lodging individuals as well. I really had to focus on small business owners throughout my qualitative research, because small business owners are the ones who really drive this economy right here. They're going to be the people who are going from place to place, and they're going to be the people who are most impacted by recessions and any sort of infrastructure changes as well. So through all of my analysis, I was able to compile all of the pros as well as all of the cons of tourism right here. And as I'm sure that everyone can imagine, everyone wants to go to Hawaii. This makes Hawaii an absolutely beautiful spot to vacation and makes it an absolutely essential part of Hawaii's economic output. Hawaii in the travel and tourism industry is responsible for 22.8% of economic output, which contributes to $17.75 billion in visitor spending and collects over $2 billion in state tax revenue. This, as a result, employs 200,000 individuals on the island. And as you can see from my graph right here, this is about 20% of individuals on Hawaii. However, this cannot be sustained forever, because you can see this entire dip and everything really crashed right here due to COVID-19 and its impending pandemic and travel restrictions, which I'll get into a little bit later in my presentation. However, as I mentioned before, there are some cons within the travel and tourism industry as well. Through my research, I was able to identify that Hawaii falls victim to an economic concept known as the natural resource curse. The natural resource curse is essentially the economic equivalent of putting all of your eggs in one basket. Hawaii was given this beautiful opportunity with all of these natural resources, plentiful beaches, beautiful rainforests, a spot where everyone wants to go. Obviously, it became the natural solution for them to maximize everything that they had, focused on this one part of their infrastructure, this one part of their natural resource economy. However, since they were devoting all their energy towards this, they did not have the time, opportunity, nor resources to devote towards some of the lesser infrastructure things that they have, such as their education system. If you compare this to a different state such as Massachusetts, which has no natural resources and the blizzards are trying to kill you every single winter, Massachusetts has a very strong education system, which is going to be something that has led to our stable economic growth and really contribute to our strong economy throughout the time. So throughout my research, I wanted to really look at the difference on how Hawaii looks at during its times of peak tourism, where in 2019, it welcomed over 10.4 million visitors to the island, which was a new record for Hawaii. And then in the very next year, we all know what happened due to COVID-19, and they welcomed nearly no visitors to Hawaii. So by analyzing how Hawaii looks at this maximization of tourism and how it looks in the absence of tourism, you're able to clearly see the trade-offs of how Hawaii will be at both this high level and this low level, and be able to weigh the pros and the cons of each, being able to maximize the benefits of the tourism industry as a whole. This slide basically shows a summary of my findings that I was able to find from all of my small business owners. At high levels of tourism, Hawaii is able to capture all of their economic output that I was able to emphasize on some of my previous slides. And while this is a huge contributing factor and really good for Hawaii and its economy, there are a lot of issues that are associated with this. There is a dependence on unskilled labor within the nation within the state of Hawaii. And this is something that is really important because since Hawaii ranks so low in education, they're consistently within the 40s to 50s in all of the national polls that we run. There are a lot of individuals who do not have the marketable skills to get jobs that are outside the travel and tourism industry. There are a ton of maids, bus drivers, and a lot of other individuals who are able to rely on the travel and tourism industry. But when the travel and tourism industry goes away, as we saw during COVID-19, what do these individuals do? They're left with very little marketable skills, which makes it very difficult for them to find employment and do anything to really earn a living wage. There's obviously the factors of environmental and cultural degradation that comes with the sustainability of the travel and tourism industry as well. However, at low levels of tourism, Hawaii is going to really be able to capitalize along their local interests. During COVID-19, there was a huge local reclamation of the island, which is really important since a lot of locals have a lot of issues with the travel and tourism industry as a whole. They are also able to better sustain any of their economic interests in the industry forever, which is going to be really good for long-term tourism. All these beautiful beaches and weather and everything is the main reason why people travel to Hawaii, but they're only able to utilize all of these resources as long as they exist. By further investing in sustainability practices, it'll ensure that these resources exist longer, so Hawaii is able to be more sustained along any of these factors as well. And finally, the key takeaway that we need to focus on here is for Hawaii to balance both of these things, they need to develop other industries and really invest in education as a state as a whole. So my findings throughout my paper and what I recommend to the Hawaiian government is Hawaii needs to further diversify their economy. Right now, they're putting all of their eggs in one basket, they're falling victims to the natural resource curse, and they're too dependent upon this factor of unskilled labor. The Hawaiian government is notified of the film and agricultural industries and realizes these as opportunities for them to further diversify their economy and take steps towards contributing to their more stable economic growth. By also bolstering their educational institutions, they're going to be able to pull their rankings out of the depths where they are right now in the 40s to 50s across all the national polls. And any of their individuals, you're going to be developing a workforce that has higher levels of human capital, higher levels of marketable skills, and people who are able to find jobs wherever they want to find jobs, not being forced into this really specific industry that is really dependent on any sort of labor fluctuations, market fluctuations, or anything as a whole. So it's going to be better for all of the residents of Hawaii in the end. So I would like to thank the time that you've given me here today. I've put up a QR code right here to highlight the academic paper that I have written in conjunction with my presentation that I've given you here today. It is my hope to get this academic paper published. I've already gotten one of my previous papers published, so I'm hoping to go through the same journal to work on this one as well. So if you want to read any more about it, I encourage you to scan this QR code right here. And I would like to thank you for your time. I will now open up the floor for any questions or concerns regarding my presentation. Thank you. Yeah, the mic's on the floor. Perfect.
I'm not going to ask about the pineapple pizza. So just curious, Aiden, going back to the slide where there was the significant drop-off in economic activity, given tourism reliance on employees, kind of service sector heavy, did people leave the island? I mean, it's a hard place to get to. It's an expensive place to live. Do you have any sense for whether it's government, whether it's like trade associations, Chamber of Commerce, is there some kind of a labor strategy? Or are they doing things to kind of address how they deal with worker bees? Or
yeah, right now they're kind of aware of these situations, but there isn't enough being done. There is a huge, one of the things that I realized when I went to travel to Hawaii to actually conduct these qualitative interviews is there's a huge issue with homelessness on Hawaii. And a lot of these individuals are people who fall victim to these things that you're describing, who used to have any of this, and then in the economic downturns that are associated with any sort of these issues with putting all of your eggs in one basket, essentially, they had nowhere else to turn to. And since it is so expensive to get off the islands, they're kind of forced to stay there. So it's a really kind of difficult cycle to break, but an essential one to break as well.
Great job, Aiden. I have a question basically following up on what you've just said about the qualitative interviews. And I'm wondering whether you can elaborate a little bit more on what you heard from especially the business owners, the local business owners, and other people that you were interviewing. Much of the presentation really focused on very precise economic measures, statistics, the kind of data that don't require interviews, really. So how did the interviews actually inform even the kinds of questions or the kind of categories and conceptual framing of the project? And what did you learn from those interviews that most surprised you and helped you sort of revise your own thinking?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these interviews were something that was absolutely essential for my project. I mean, it's so easy to read everything online, but that doesn't really give you the full picture that's there, especially for something that is as unique as this situation here and is as how dependent Hawaii is on travel and tourism. It's really important to actually have your feet on the ground and talk to these individuals who are there as well. Through these interviews, I was able to get a really in-depth understanding of how the entire Hawaiian economy actually operated as a whole. And they were able to show me a lot of things that I wouldn't have just been able to find on my own or wouldn't have been able to find sitting at my computer desk. One of these things that I realized is actually highlighted in this graph that I have up here. You can kind of see these few different colors that I have. And one of my most interesting research findings that I had is the difference between the domestic and the international visitors and how these are comprised and make up the total visitor count on Hawaii. So due to the reopening mandates that we had, when Hawaii did eventually reopen, what they had is only domestic visitors were able to come back first. And so this really exposed the differences in tipping culture between us here in the United States as well as foreign and international people as well. So this is going to be something that I didn't even consider going in beforehand, but is now there as a whole. Yeah. So I think that brings us to the end of time for questions. So I would like to once again thank everyone and encourage you to go and visit other rooms or stay in here for Charlie's presentation next. Thank you.